In a world that never stops shouting, where every corner is flooded with noise, urgency, and expectation, what if the greatest strength is found not in more, but in less? What if the most powerful transformation isn't sparked by accumulation, but by quiet subtraction? Not with grand gestures, but with small, intentional acts of release. We are constantly told to chase, to build, to prove, yet we are rarely asked, what are you willing to let go of to live lighter, deeper, freer? Imagine if peace isn't something you must find outside yourself, but something that slowly emerges when you stop clinging to what no longer serves you. Perhaps the stillness you seek has always been within reach, simply buried beneath layers of fear, habits, and expectations you didn't choose. True change often doesn't come with applause or announcement. It begins in silence, in those sacred, private moments when you choose to release what has been quietly weighing you down for far too long. This isn't about rejection, it's about reclaiming space. The space to breathe, to be, to return to who you truly are beneath the noise. And perhaps, the first thing we must release is our fear of being judged. It is subtle. This fear, quiet, patient, and persistent. It doesn't announce itself in dramatic ways. It creeps in slowly, shaping our choices, silencing our voice, and rewriting the way we show up in the world. So many of the decisions we make are not rooted in who we are, but in who we think we must be, for approval, for acceptance, for safety. And when that happens, life becomes performance instead of presence. How many times have you swallowed your truth because the room felt too sharp, too unforgiving, too ready to misunderstand? How many dreams have you postponed, not because they weren't worthy, but because you feared someone would laugh? How often have you made yourself smaller, quieter, more digestible, just so someone else wouldn't feel uncomfortable? This fear doesn't shout. It whispers. It wraps itself in reason, pretending to protect you. Be careful. It says, don't stand out. Don't be too much. Don't make anyone uncomfortable. It convinces you that conformity is safer than authenticity, that silence is wiser than truth. But in trying to be acceptable to others, you end up exiling yourself. Over time, the cost becomes invisible but immense. You lose connection to your own voice. You forget what you believe, what you love, what you want. You start living a version of your life filtered through the gaze of others. A life edited for approval, not lived in freedom. But here's the unspoken truth. Most people are far too caught up in their own internal battles to truly analyze yours. The eyes you feel watching you aren't real, they're imagined. The judgment you fear lives more in your own mind than in anyone else's. And even if someone does critique you, what then? Their opinions are not currency. They don't pay your bills. They don't walk through your storms. They don't carry the weight of your decisions. So why should they own your freedom? To break free from this invisible prison, you don't need a grand gesture. You don't need to shout, rebel, or explain. You only need to begin noticing. The next time you hesitate, before speaking, creating, sharing, ask yourself, is this hesitation rooted in fear or in truth? Am I dimming myself to stay safe? Or am I ready to live in alignment with who I really am? The most powerful revolutions are often silent. They begin in the smallest of choices, wearing what feels like you, even if it's not what's expected. Sharing your thoughts, even if your voice shakes. Choosing your path, even if no one claps for it. These acts may seem ordinary, but each one chips away at the fear. Each one plants a new seed of trust inside yourself, and over time, something beautiful happens. You begin to ask the world for less permission. You start seeking less applause and more alignment. Your self-worth detaches from praise and grows roots in clarity. This is not about arrogance, it's about ownership. It's about no longer waiting for someone else to validate what you already know in your bones, that your voice matters, that your presence has weight, that your life is not up for negotiation. Who surrounds you matters. 2. Surround yourself with people who don't flinch when you evolve. People who celebrate your growth. Who love you in your fullness, not just your familiarity. And if someone starts pulling away as you step into your truth, let them. That's not rejection. That's revelation. You are not required to shrink for anyone who's unwilling to expand with you. At the end of your life, it won't be the risks you took that haunt you, it will be the truths you buried to keep others comfortable. The moments you looked away from your own reflection because someone else didn't approve of your brightness. But you were not born to be small. You were not designed to be invisible. You were born to stand fully in your light, even if that light unsettles others. So let this be your turning point. The day you stop contorting yourself to fit into a story that was never yours to live. The moment you reclaim your narrative, your voice, your full and glorious presence. You do not need to be liked to be free. You do not need to be understood to be true. You only need the courage to show up, again and again, as yourself. And that, quietly, radically, is where everything begins. As you begin reclaiming your voice from the grip of others' opinions, another quiet truth begins to echo in the background, one that's harder to accept but impossible to ignore. Not everyone in your life is meant to walk with you forever. Growth is sacred, but it is also disruptive. It disturbs the familiar. It shifts dynamics. It invites change. And not everyone is ready for it, especially those who have grown comfortable with a version of you that you've long since outgrown. And that's where the tension lives. Some people, despite all the history, all the laughter, all the shared memories, slowly begin to feel like weight. Not because they are bad or malicious, but because they no longer know how to support the version of you that is becoming more whole, more honest, more awake. And when that happens, something painful but essential must occur. You have to choose your peace over their comfort. Because connection, while beautiful, is not the same as compatibility. Familiarity is not the same as safety. Just because someone has known you for years does not mean they know how to honor you now. It's easy to spot dramatic betrayals, but the most dangerous relationships are often subtle in their damage. They erode you slowly. They make you question your worth, your instincts, your joy. You begin to apologize for your sensitivity. You begin to tiptoe around your truth. You begin to accept criticism dressed as love and manipulation masked as concern. Until one day, you're no longer sure where you went, but you know you're not home within yourself anymore. That's the cost of staying in relationships that ask you to betray yourself just to keep the peace. But here's something no one tells you. You don't need permission to walk away. You don't need a final argument or a dramatic falling out to justify your exit. Sometimes, the most powerful form of self-respect is the quiet decision to stop showing up where you're no longer seen. To stop shrinking for those who cannot hold the fullness of who you're becoming. Letting go doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes, it's just one less text, one more boundary. A soft but firm shift from trying to fix the unfixable to finally choosing yourself. Ask yourself with gentle honesty, after spending time with them, do I feel lighter or heavier? Do I leave their presence feeling grounded, or like I have to rebuild myself all over again? Do I feel safe being me, or am I always editing myself to be accepted? These questions are not accusations. They are invitations to clarity, to truth, to liberation. You are not too much for wanting relationships that nourish your soul instead of draining your energy. You are not selfish for needing space from people who only love you when you're easy to manage. And you are certainly not ungrateful for choosing peace over persistence in relationships that only thrive when you are suffering in silence. Some people will call your boundaries walls. Let them. Some will call your growth distance. Let them. They do not have to understand your journey to respect it. And if they cannot respect it, they were never truly walking beside you, they were only standing in your way. But yes, it hurts, even when you know a relationship has expired. There is grief in letting go. There is grief in walking away from what was once beautiful. There is grief in realizing that someone you once loved cannot come with you into your future. But that grief is sacred. It means you cared. It means it mattered. And it means that your heart still works. Let yourself feel it, but don't let it stop you, because on the other side of that grief is space. Real space. The kind that can finally be filled with relationships that reflect who you truly are, not who you had to pretend to be. People who meet you where you are, not where it's convenient. People who hold your truth with reverence, not resistance. People who celebrate your growth, not resent it. So choose your people wisely. Choose those who pour into your spirit without keeping score. Those who love you without reshaping you. Those who stay, not because you're easy, but because they know your heart. And if that means your circle becomes smaller, let it. Let it become sacred. Because your energy is sacred. Your peace is sacred. Your life is not a revolving door for anyone who makes you question your worth. Letting go of what drains you is not cruelty, it is kindness. It is self-respect. It is the brave declaration that your healing matters more than history. So let go, not with anger, not with bitterness, but with quiet resolve. You do not owe anyone your suffering. You owe yourself your wholeness. And the moment you choose that, truly and fully, you step into a life that supports your rising, every single part of it. As you begin to break free from self-sabotaging habits and step into a rhythm that feels more aligned, a quieter but equally heavy burden begins to reveal itself, the compulsive need to control. It doesn't always come storming in. Sometimes, it's disguised as perfectionism. Sometimes, as hyper-responsibility. Often, it looks like being prepared or thorough. But underneath the surface, it's fear, fear dressed in structure, fear cloaked in order. At first, control feels reassuring. It gives you something to hold on to in a world that moves too fast and changes without notice. It whispers, if I just plan better, nothing will go wrong. If I stay on top of everything, I won't get hurt again. If I manage all the variables, I'll finally feel safe. But control, in its extreme, becomes a cage. It turns life into a checklist, relationships into calculations, and joy into a moving target. You're no longer experiencing life, you're trying to engineer it. And the more you grip, the more brittle everything feels. Like sand slipping through closed fists. The tighter your hold, the more you lose. What makes it worse is that the world often praises those who appear to have it all under control. We idolize discipline, structure, predictability. But there's a fine line between being grounded and being gripped. When control becomes your identity, anything uncertain becomes a threat. You stop adapting and start resisting. And what you resist, you suffer. But there's a different way to live, one that begins with a radical admission, I cannot control everything. And I was never meant to. There is relief in that sentence. A release. It is not a failure to accept your limits, it is wisdom. The trees do not fight the seasons. The tides do not rage against the moon. The sky does not demand certainty before opening to the sunrise. Why should you? Surrender is not passive. It is not about giving up on life, it's about giving into it. Giving into the flow, the movement, the mystery. It's about choosing responsiveness over rigidity, and curiosity over fear. You don't stop caring when you let go. You start caring differently. You shift from control to clarity, from anxiety to presence. It often begins in the body before the mind catches up. A clenched jaw, tight shoulders, racing thoughts, the impulse to check, to fix, to plan, to brace. In those moments, pause, breathe. Ask gently, what am I holding so tightly right now? What am I afraid will happen if I loosen my grip? Most of the time, we are afraid of being caught off guard, of being hurt again, of watching something fall apart that we built so carefully. But look back, haven't you already lived through seasons of uncertainty and made it through? You survived the job loss, the heartbreak, the diagnosis, the silence. You bent, but you didn't break. And you are wiser now than you were then. Trust that. Letting go doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop clinging. It means you stop trying to micromanage things that were never yours to carry in the first place. Other people's choices, timelines, moods, perceptions. You let people be who they are, without trying to edit their behavior to match your comfort. You let life be what it is, without demanding it follow your script. Try practicing surrender in the little things first. Arrive at a meeting without over-preparing every word. Let a friend express their feelings without needing to offer a solution. Allow yourself to rest without earning it through exhaustion. Let the day be messy. Let it be real. Let it surprise you. And when something doesn't go the way you hoped, resist the urge to assign blame, especially to yourself. Not every detour is a disaster. Sometimes the route you didn't choose becomes the one that changes everything. Control often masquerades as power. But true power is presence. It's being so deeply rooted in yourself that you don't panic when the world moves differently than you expected. It's the ability to stay grounded even when your plans unravel. That's not weakness. That's emotional strength. That's resilience. So, surrender, not because life is always kind, but because resisting it has never made it kinder. Let go, not because you don't care, but because you're finally learning how to care in a way that doesn't cost you your peace. The truth is, you don't need to manage every outcome to create a meaningful life. You don't need to know every step ahead to keep walking forward. You only need to trust that you can meet each moment as it comes, with grace, with softness, with strength. So open your hands, let the wind shift, let people change, let uncertainty arrive, and instead of tensing, lean into it, because in that space, between what you planned and what actually happens, is where life breathes, where love happens, where real joy finds you, not because you controlled it, but because you finally made space for it. And in that surrender, what you find is not chaos, but clarity, not helplessness, but peace, not emptiness, but freedom. You are free now, and you don't need to hold it all together to prove it. Once you begin loosening your grip on control, a deeper layer of truth begins to surface, one that feels even more personal, even more tender. You realize that so much of your suffering was never about the situation itself, but about the invisible standards you placed on how it should have unfolded. We carry within us silent, sacred contracts, agreements we never spoke aloud but still expected life to honor. We expect that hard work will be immediately rewarded, that love will always be mutual, that if we do everything right, nothing will fall apart. We expect people to read our minds, timing to match our desires, and outcomes to validate our worth. And when reality doesn't follow the script, we're left not only with disappointment, but with shame, confusion, and a sense of personal failure. But life is not beholden to the expectations we craft in private. It never promised to follow the architecture of our hopes. It moves as it moves, messy, raw, non-linear. And when we hold too tightly to what we thought should be, we miss the beauty of what actually is. It's not hope that harms us. It's the attachment to a very specific shape that hope must take. Unrealistic expectations quietly trap us in a loop. We set a bar that's rigid, then punish ourselves, or others, when reality dares to deviate. Instead of allowing each moment to be what it is, we measure it against the blueprint in our minds and call it lacking. But what if the moment isn't broken? What if it's just different? When we expect healing to happen on a schedule, we overlook the strength it takes just to keep going. When we expect relationships to mirror fairy tales, we miss the depth that comes from imperfection. From real people learning to love each other in flawed and human ways. When we expect ourselves to be further along, we forget how far we've already come. Letting go of these expectations doesn't mean giving up. It means growing up into the emotional maturity that can hold both desire and reality at once. It means allowing life to teach you, not just please you. And that requires surrender. Not the kind that feels like collapse, but the kind that feels like exhaling after carrying too much for too long. Forgiving yourself is a part of this, too. You will make plans that don't come to pass. You will trust people who let you down. You will try your best and still fall short. And that's not failure, that's being human. Every step you've taken, even the ones that led nowhere, brought you here. To more understanding, to more softness, to more compassion for yourself and others. Release the belief that you're late to your own life. You're not. You're right on time for everything that is meant to shape you. And release the belief that others must act according to your script in order for you to feel at peace. People will misunderstand you. They will disappoint you. They will choose paths you wouldn't choose. That doesn't mean something is wrong. It means they are living their story, just as you are living yours. When we expect others to think, speak, or love exactly as we would, we reduce relationships to projections. But when we let people be who they are, we create space for something more real than control, connection. So, the next time your expectations are unmet, don't immediately resist it. Pause. Breathe. Ask yourself, am I hurting because of what's happening, or because of what I imagined would happen? Often, it's not the moment that wounds us, it's the meaning we've assigned to it. Let that be your compass, discernment. Not drama. Curiosity. Not conclusion. A willingness to be surprised by how things unfold, rather than crushed that they didn't go your way. Because sometimes the plans that fall apart are the ones that were never meant to hold you. And sometimes, the gifts you receive are wrapped in delay, detour, or redirection. Shift your lens. Practice gratitude. Not because everything is ideal, but because you are willing to find the sacred within the real. Be thankful for the slow progress, for the lesson hidden in the loss, for the detour that softened your sharp edges and grew your grace. Stop measuring your life against imagined timelines. Stop assuming you must arrive to feel worthy. You are already here. And here is enough. You are still becoming. And becoming cannot be rushed. Let the present moment breathe. Let it surprise you. Let it disappoint you. Even, and still choose to meet it with open eyes and an unguarded heart. You are allowed to want more. You are also allowed to rest in what is, without punishment. without pressure. This is what it means to be free, to hold space for possibility while releasing your grip on prediction, to expect nothing and welcome everything. As you begin to release the tight grip of expectations, both on life and yourself, another form of freedom gently begins to unfold. It doesn't arrive with thunder or grand revelation. It comes quietly, almost shyly, in the recognition that you no longer need to be right to feel worthy. For so long, many of us have believed that being right equates to being seen, that correctness equals credibility, that if we don't assert our opinions, defend our positions, or out-explain the other person, we will lose something vital, our voice, our value, our place in the room. But what if being right has been more about protection than truth? What if beneath the sharp edges of certainty, there's a soft, tender fear of being misunderstood, of not being taken seriously, of being dismissed, rejected, or unseen? At some point in life, many of us learned that being wrong meant we were vulnerable. And in a world that often weaponizes vulnerability, we built shields out of conviction, out of argument, out of always needing the last word. And yet, no shield is ever truly weightless. Over time, the need to always be right becomes exhausting. Every conversation turns into a calculation. Every disagreement feels like a threat. We stop listening not because we don't care, but because we are too busy preparing our defense. And somewhere in the midst of trying to be understood, we forget to understand. But there's another way to move through the world. A softer, stronger way. What if we chose presence over proof? What if, instead of aiming to win the conversation, we aimed to deepen the connection? What if we allowed ourselves to listen, not just with the intent to reply, but with the willingness to be changed? Letting go of the need to be right is not a sign of weakness. It is a mark of inner security. It means you've reached a place within yourself where your value no longer depends on validation, where you no longer need to dominate a dialogue to feel grounded in your own truth. It's a powerful thing to say, "I don't know," or "You may be right," or "I see it differently, but I'm open to your view." These are not concessions. These are bridges. And the strongest people are often those who know when to lay down their armor and make room for understanding. We've been conditioned to think that certainty is strength. But in reality, strength often looks like stillness. Like letting someone else speak. Like holding a moment of tension without rushing to fix it. Like staying in the room even when opinions clash, not to convince, but to connect. Because in the end, connection is never built on dominance. It's built on respect, on space, on the gentle courage to say, "Tell me more. Help me see what you see." We've all met those rare people, the ones who make you feel heard, not argued with, who don't try to win, but try to understand. These are the people who feel like home. And the reason they feel that way isn't because they always agree with us, but because they give us permission to be fully human, flawed, evolving, unsure, and they love us anyway. Be that person, for others, and for yourself. The next time you feel the impulse to correct someone, to assert your knowledge, to push your point across, pause. Take a breath. Ask yourself, what am I really trying to protect right now? Is this about truth? Or is it about ego? There's nothing wrong with having convictions. There's nothing wrong with speaking your truth. But when truth becomes a weapon rather than a window, we lose the very thing we're trying to preserve, our connection to others. Sometimes, peace matters more than precision. Sometimes, love asks us to let go of logic, not because logic isn't important, but because being right isn't always what's needed. Sometimes what's needed is softness. Sometimes what's needed is silence. Not every hill is worth dying on. Not every debate is worth having. Not every disagreement is a call to arms. Let it go. Let someone else have the last word. Let the conversation end without a clear winner. Let yourself be wrong. Let someone else be right. And then, watch what happens inside you. Feel how the tension melts. Feel how your heart steadies. Feel how your relationships deepen. Because when you no longer have anything to prove, you become profoundly powerful. You become free. And that freedom isn't loud. It doesn't need to announce itself. It walks quietly into every room. Grounded and open. Unshaken by difference. Unbothered by disagreement. It holds space. It softens the air. It listens. It learns. It lets go. And in that letting go, something beautiful arises. Not just peace, but presence. Not just stillness, but strength. The kind of strength that doesn't shout, doesn't argue, doesn't interrupt. The kind of strength that simply is. After shedding the armor of always needing to be right, a new kind of silence begins to call your name. Not the kind that settles between sentences or follows the end of a conversation, but the deeper, more sacred kind. The kind of silence that lives beneath the constant noise of your devices. The kind that has always been there, waiting patiently for you to come home to it. We rarely recognize how much noise we carry until we stop. Until we pause mid-scroll and realize we've forgotten what we were looking for. Until we catch ourselves clicking, not out of curiosity, but compulsion. Until we notice that our attention, once a sacred and powerful force, has become fragmented, exhausted, scattered across tabs and timelines, apps and alerts. This isn't just about sound. This is about the weight of modern distraction. It's the hum beneath your thoughts, the invisible pull in your pocket. The way your hand reaches for your phone before your heart has even realized it's aching for something else. A message. A headline. A hit of dopamine. Digital noise is deceptive. It arrives looking like connection, like convenience, like company. But slowly, it takes up space. Mental space. Emotional space. Spiritual space. And without noticing, you begin to disappear from your own life. You become present everywhere, except with yourself. You wake up and reach for a screen before you've reached for your own breath. You scroll through other people's lives before you've greeted your own soul. You take in 1,000 images, ideas, and opinions before you've had a single original thought that day. And the cost is more than lost time. It's lost presence. It's lost clarity. It's the slow erosion of your ability to sit with stillness, to hear your own intuition, to know what you truly think or feel, without the interference of a world constantly shouting what you should. But stillness, true stillness, cannot be downloaded. It must be chosen, protected, honored, built into the rhythm of your life like breath, necessary, vital, cleansing. This doesn't mean you need to escape technology. You don't need to renounce the digital world to reclaim your soul. The answer isn't absence, it's awareness. You begin by asking better questions. Why am I reaching for this screen right now? What am I hoping to feel? What am I afraid of facing in this moment of silence? Because often, beneath the need to scroll is an ache, a hunger for meaning, a loneliness we're too scared to name, a fear that if we stop moving, we'll have to feel what we've been numbing. The screen becomes a shield, but it also becomes a wall. So what if, instead of defaulting to noise, you started creating space? Not just space from your phone, but space for your mind to rest, for your heart to speak, for your creativity to return from wherever you last buried it beneath the weight of algorithms and inboxes. Begin small. Let the first and last 30 minutes of your day belong to you, not to your feed. Let your mornings unfold with breath, with light, with silence. Let your nights descend with quiet, with gratitude, with rest. Create micro-rituals that protect your peace, walks without headphones, meals without screens, conversations without distractions. 1 hour a day where your phone lives in another room, and you live fully in this one. These aren't rules. These are reclamations. Every small choice to pause is an act of rebellion in a world addicted to speed. Every moment of attention reclaimed is a whisper to your own spirit, I see you again. And yes, it will be uncomfortable at first. Stillness always is when you've been sprinting from it. Your mind will itch. Your fingers will reach. Your thoughts will feel loud without the buffer of a glowing screen. That's not failure. That's detox. That's the residue of overstimulation leaving your nervous system. Stay long enough to hear what's under the noise. You may hear grief. You may hear longing. You may hear your own heart asking for a different kind of life. And you may also hear something else. Peace. It's been there all along, beneath the push notifications and curated content. Beneath the comparison and the constant input. Peace never left you. You just haven't had space to listen. You are allowed to log off, to not reply, to miss an update, to protect your energy as fiercely as your time, because attention is not free. Every scroll is a trade. Every click is a choice. Every hour spent reacting to someone else's agenda is an hour not spent creating your own. So choose. Choose wisely. Choose deliberately. You were not born to consume. You were born to create. You were not built to absorb everyone else's opinion. You were built to form your own. And you were never meant to be available to the world 24/7, especially not at the cost of your own presence. Let this be your invitation to return to yourself, to sit with the silence that doesn't ask anything of you, to write something without sharing it, to take a photo and not post it, to feel something deeply and let it live only inside your own heart. There is a richness to life that cannot be captured in pixels. There is a wisdom in your body that doesn't need a search engine. There is a stillness in your spirit that's been waiting, patiently, for the noise to fade. So look up. Look around. Notice the sunlight dancing on the wall. The sound of your own breathing. The way your coffee smells when you're not in a rush. The small miracle of being alive and awake and unplugged, even just for this one moment. The world will not fall apart because you missed a text, but you might slowly fall apart if you never make space to be with yourself again. This is not about rejection, it's about restoration. You don't have to delete everything. Just discern what deserves your attention. Curate your digital world the same way you curate your home, with intention, with boundaries, with care. Choose voices that uplift, not provoke. Choose content that informs, not inflames. Choose presence over performance, because at the end of the day, you won't remember how many likes you got. You'll remember the quiet mornings you gave yourself. You'll remember the evenings spent with your full presence in the room. You'll remember how it felt to be truly here, for your life, for your loved ones, for your own mind. So let the screen dim, let the silence rise, let your soul return, and when you're ready, re-enter the world, not to react, but to respond, not to chase noise, but to offer presence, because the most powerful thing you can be in a world addicted to distraction is deeply, unapologetically awake. When the digital chaos quiets and the external distractions fade, what remains is the landscape of your inner world, the terrain of your thoughts. And sometimes, what you find there is not peace, but noise of another kind. Not loud or flashing, but persistent. A subtle hum of self-doubt, unworthiness, and old stories that echo like they were spoken just yesterday. This is the noise we often forget to name, the voice within that tells us we're not good enough, smart enough, lovable enough, far enough. It's the most familiar voice, and often the least questioned, because we've lived with it for so long. We start to believe it. We treat thoughts like facts, forgetting that they are just fragments of perception, shaped by past wounds, shaped by things others told us when we were too young to challenge them. We don't remember where the story began, we just keep living by its rules. Thoughts like, "You always mess things up, no one really cares, you'll never be as good as them, they're stronger, more disciplined, more lovable, more worthy." These aren't just phrases, they are seeds, planted in the soil of our self-perception, watered by repetition. And what grows from them is not a life. We grow walls, masks, defenses. We stop trying before we even begin. We shrink ourselves. We apologize for existing. But here is the quiet revolution. Your thoughts are not your destiny. They are not facts. They are patterns. And patterns can be changed. The first step is awareness, not force. Not denial. Awareness. Sit with your thoughts without becoming them. Observe the narrative without endorsing it. When a harsh thought arises, don't argue, ask. Ask it gently, where did you come from? Whose voice do you sound like? What are you trying to protect me from? You may be surprised by what you find. Sometimes, beneath the self-critical thought is a younger version of you trying to stay safe. Sometimes, it's a protective reflex, not a truth. And when we begin to understand that, we stop seeing our negative thoughts as enemies, and start seeing them as signals. Signals that healing is needed. And healing begins with a reframe. This isn't about fake positivity. This isn't about pretending pain doesn't exist. It's about learning to speak to yourself the way you would speak to someone you love. It's about transforming "I'm a failure" into "I'm still learning." "I'm stuck" into "I'm being reshaped." "I'll never get there" into "I am further than I've ever been." Reframing doesn't erase the pain, but it gives it purpose. It allows struggle to become part of the process, not proof that you're broken. And slowly, your mind begins to learn, kindness is safe. Growth is possible. Self-trust is allowed. And in this quiet inner shift, your world begins to change. Gratitude becomes a lifeline, not to dismiss the hard moments, but to anchor you in the real ones. You can sit in a moment of uncertainty and still say, right now, "I'm grateful for the sunlight on the floor, for the friend who texted, for the breath I didn't know I needed." Gratitude reminds you that not everything is wrong, even when your mind says it is, and it matters, too, what you allow into that mind. The people, the voices, the energy. If your inner world is under construction, be mindful of the material you're using. Words have weight. Stories have impact. Surround yourself with those who lift your vision, not shrink it. Your inner dialogue becomes your default environment. Tend to it like a garden. Pull out what poisons. Plant what heals. You don't have to be perfect to be gentle. You don't have to be healed to begin. You just have to choose. Over and over again. The path back to yourself. You may not control which thought shows up first, that's a relic of your past. But you do choose which ones stay. You choose which ones you repeat. Which ones you water with belief. Which ones you give power to. And if you choose enough times, a new pattern forms. A new voice emerges. A voice that doesn't mock, but mentors. That doesn't shame, but steadies. That doesn't ask you to hustle for worth, but reminds you it was never in question. This is the voice of your healing. It doesn't shout, it whispers. "I'm proud of you for trying again. It's okay to rest. You don't have to prove anything today. You are enough, not someday. Now, let that voice grow louder. Let it become the one you listen to when the world gets heavy. And be patient with the process. Negative thoughts don't vanish overnight. They fade slowly. over weeks, over years. As you choose, again and again, not to believe them, they will still show up. But now, they won't run the show. You'll recognize them, you'll acknowledge them, and then, you'll choose differently, because now, you know better. You know that behind every harsh thought is a tender heart asking for reassurance. And now, you are learning to give it to yourself. When you build a kinder mind, you create a safer home for your soul. And when your inner world softens, so does the outer one. You stop reacting to shadows. You stop bracing for failure. You begin to move through the world with steadiness, not fear. With clarity, not confusion. You speak differently, walk differently, live differently, because you've returned to the truth. You were never broken, just buried. And now, you are rising, not because your thoughts are perfect, but because they are yours again, because you've reclaimed the pen, because you've remembered that every story, especially the ones you tell yourself, can be rewritten. As the noise of the outer world fades and your inner dialogue begins to soften, you start to feel something else, something more subtle but just as suffocating. You look around and realize, your environment is not neutral. It's communicating with you every moment. And what it says often mirrors what you haven't been ready to face. The clutter on your desk, the clothes you haven't worn in years, the drawers you avoid opening, the emails that sit unread, not because they're urgent, but because they carry weight. It's not just stuff, it's symbolism, it's unmade decisions, frozen energy, parts of yourself you haven't made peace with, because the truth is, clutter, whether physical or mental, isn't accidental, it's expressive. It's the physical manifestation of delay, denial, or depletion, and over time, it becomes heavy, not just to the eyes, but to the spirit. We often underestimate how much our surroundings affect us. But when we enter a room that feels open, intentional, and clean, something shifts inside. The nervous system relaxes. The mind slows down. A breath deepens without effort. There's more space, not just to move, but to think, to feel, to be. This isn't about perfection. It's not about becoming a minimalist or having color-coded closets. It's about presence. About reclaiming your right to live in a space that supports, not competes with, your peace. So start gently. Start small. A single surface. A corner of your room. A digital folder. Let each decision become sacred. Hold the item, the file, the memory in your hands or your heart and ask, does this still serve me? Does this represent who I am, or who I am trying to outgrow? Clearing is an act of becoming. Every time you let something go, you affirm that you no longer need to be weighed down by what once defined you. That sweater you bought for a version of yourself you never became. That pile of papers that belonged to a past ambition. That book you're holding on to out of guilt, not joy. Release them, not because they were meaningless, but because you are changing, and your space deserves to reflect that. But the clearing doesn't stop at the material. Often, what's messiest isn't what's on the table, but what's swirling in your mind. Mental clutter, the plans you never started, the conversations you keep replaying, the worry loops, the guilt lists, the unfinished narratives that hijack your attention every time you try to be still. You carry these like invisible bags. Some of them you packed yourself. Others were handed to you without permission. And no one taught you it was okay to set them down. But you can begin with awareness. When a thought returns like an echo, ask it what it needs. Ask yourself, is this thought useful or just familiar? Is it serving my growth, or replaying a fear? Then write. Writing is one of the most powerful tools for internal decluttering. Not to publish, not to fix, but to empty, To make space. Pour it onto the page, the doubts, the irritations, the forgotten dreams, the unsaid goodbyes. Name them so they stop haunting you unnamed. Follow that with clarity. Create space in your day the way you created it in your room. Not everything is urgent. Not every task belongs on your plate. You are allowed to do fewer things better. You are allowed to prioritize peace over productivity. Let your calendar breathe. Let your goals be honest. Some were written when you didn't know who you truly were. You can change them now. You're allowed to evolve. This process won't be clean. Letting go always stirs things up. There will be a part of you that wants to keep the mess. To cling to what's familiar, even if it's chaotic. You'll convince yourself, I might need this one day. But ask instead, do I need it today? Holding on to everything just in case is how you end up with a life too full for anything new to enter. Letting go is an act of trust. In yourself. In your future. In the space that opens up when you finally stop holding what no longer fits. Some clutter is tied to guilt. Gifts you didn't love. Projects you didn't finish. Dreams that belonged to someone else. You are not a bad person for releasing these. You're a growing person. A healing person. A person choosing peace over pressure. Let that be enough. And know this, clearing doesn't mean emptiness. It means alignment. It means every item in your home has a purpose. Every thought in your mind has room to breathe. And you are no longer drowning in your own backlog of shoulds. Because peace is not something you wait for. It's something you make room for. Let your space be a sanctuary. Let your mind be a meadow, not a maze. Open the windows. Let go of the boxes and bags and browser tabs. And when the resistance whispers, you'll miss this, smile softly and answer, maybe. But I'll gain myself. You were never meant to carry everything. You were meant to carry light. And lightness begins the moment you decide, I am done living under the weight of everything I couldn't release. So go ahead, make space, then breathe. And in that breath, feel the return, not just of clarity, but of yourself, as you begin to release what no longer serves you, from cluttered spaces to tangled thoughts. From digital noise to inherited beliefs, what you're left with is not emptiness, but clarity. A quieter kind of presence begins to take root. And in that space, one final weight rises to the surface, the subtle, ever-present urge to measure yourself against others. It's one of the most human of habits. So quiet, so normalized, that we barely notice when it starts. A glance at someone else's life. A post. A conversation. A passing comment. And suddenly, you feel behind. You question your timing, your choices, your worth. Without warning, a shadow stretches over your joy, not because your life has lost its meaning, but because you've started borrowing someone else's. Comparison is not just a thief of joy. It is a thief of presence, of authenticity, of peace. It draws you out of your own life and drops you into someone else's chapter, as if that were ever the place you were meant to be. It shifts your gaze from what do I value, to what do they have that I don't, and soon, the rhythm you had begun to build within yourself feels disrupted, rushed, unsteady, uncertain. But here's the quiet truth. No one's path is meant to look the same. And yours, in all its winding and waiting and wonder, is not behind, it's just different. Comparison convinces us that there's a race we're supposed to be winning, that there's a timeline we're supposed to be on. But your life is not a scoreboard. And your worth was never tied to how quickly you got somewhere. So when the ache of comparison appears, when envy flickers, when doubt tightens, pause. Breathe. Notice the voice without letting it own the whole room. Ask it softly, what am I really longing for? Often, it's not about them. It's about something inside of you calling for more light, more love, more permission. Let that ache be a mirror, not a verdict. Let it point you back inward, because the moment you return to yourself, to your values, your vision, your voice, you begin to see clearly again. You remember that growth is not a performance. Healing is not a race. Joy is not a competition. And worth is not something earned through comparison, it's something remembered. Gratitude is the anchor. When your mind begins to drift toward what you lack, bring it back to what is already here. Not in a forced, saccharine way, but in a tender, honest one. A warm cup of tea. A deep conversation. The strength it took to get through a hard day. Name them. Honor them. Let them remind you that your life is not empty, it's quietly full. And be ruthless with what you consume. Not everything you see online is meant to be in your heart. If certain spaces shrink your spirit, step back. If someone else's feed makes you forget how whole you are, unfollow. Take a break. Create room for your own story to breathe. Comparison thrives when your inner world is neglected. So nurture it. Give yourself the space to grow at your own pace. In your own way. Measure your progress not against someone else's success, but against your own truth. Are you kinder than you were? More aware? More aligned? Then you are moving forward, whether or not anyone sees it, because your journey isn't meant to be spectacular. It's meant to be sincere. Trust that your pace is not a problem. Your rhythm is not a mistake. The unfolding of your life is not delayed, it is divine. So when you find yourself slipping into the trap again, and you will, return. Return to your breath, to the ground beneath your feet, to the quiet beauty of your own becoming. You are not behind. You are on time. Exactly as you are. Exactly where you are meant to be.